All right, we're going to make a blues piece, a C blues piece in iPhone Garageband. So it's important that you set it up properly to begin. Once you've loaded up the app, your main screen will come up. But what we're going to do is just make sure the project's set up first. So once we've created song, we need to go into the main window. So if you click on the top left, we go into the main project, and at the end on the right, click on the add and extend the piece, because currently it's only 8 bars long. So we've just made this a lot longer so that we can accommodate the whole of our piece. If you don't do that, it tends to loop. So recording the 12-bar blues chords, we're just using the auto piano function. The higher up you play, the higher pitched the chord is. Okay, so once you've done that, go back to your main window, and we're going to double click on it and make sure it is quantized, make sure it's in time. So if you click on it, you can go to the top, to the little place next to the left of the FX, and go to quantization. And we need to quantize this to an 1/8, just to make sure it is in time. We'll play it back to make sure it's okay. Once we've looped it, because that's going to be the basis of our piece. 1 chord per bar, 12 bars in total. Change to F, 1 more F, and so on. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our next track. Now to do the walking bass, we're going to do this on the keyboard here, okay? So if you go up to the top left and select a new instrument, if we go back and click on other, scroll down, and you'll be able to find different basses. I've gone for the upright bass. Sounds like an authentic acoustic bass. And we're going to record in the walking bass part. This part is a bit harder, so you might want to do this in different sections. That's the F part, and then the G part. So if you find this harder, break it down and do it in different sections. I'm going to do it all in one for the moment. So that repeats again. Moves up to F. Back to C again. Up to G. Down to F. And down to C. A little bit different at the end, just going down step by step all the way back to C. So again, now what we're going to do is quantize it. So we're going to go back to our main window, and we're going to go to track settings, quantize, and again go for an 1/8. It's nice and steady. An 1/8 is fine. Let's see how it sounds together. The whole time we've got this metronome on to keep us in time, clicking along. Now we want to add some drums in, so we've got some different options. Now for a blues piece, we want it to sound acoustic, so we can open up this version of the drums. Really, we want just a hi-hat or a ride cymbal, a snare, and a kick. So you can record this in different ways. This is the more electronic drums, so you can hear from that drum there. It's a bit too contemporary for what we want. So we're going to go back into the other window, and we're going to try with the original drums that came up on the screen. The acoustic drums. And you can do this in different ways. You might want to record it bit by bit for ease. So that's the kick and snare. That's the open hi-hat. I think we're going to go for a ride instead, a ride cymbal. So we're going to try and go for something similar to that. But I'm just going to record the ride on its own to start with. Something like that. Now this bit's swung. Quite hard to play it together in time, like that. So we're just going to do the ride. Okay, so that's enough. Now, as this is swung, we're going to have to quantize it in a different way. If you do normal quantizing, it's going to make it sound straight. Now, we want it to be swung. So we're going to click back on track settings again, and under quantizing, we're going to click swing this time and try these different ones. Now, experiment with which one works the best for you. For me, that's probably not quite the right one. That's an 8th swing heavy, or you could try an 8th swing light as well. Once you found one that you think works well, click loop again. We've got that going, and then we're going to create a new track, and we're going to do the kick and snare on this one. Something like that. Here we go. Okay, that's enough of that. Now obviously there's lots of other things you can do with the drum kit. We're just going to do a normal kick, snare and ride cymbal drum beat for the moment. Again, we're going to go back to swing for this. Start with straight. This doesn't sound quite right, so we go back to swing. I'm going to try one of these, see if that sounds better. You can add in things like drum fills and stuff like that later, maybe some crash cymbals, but for the moment, for this piece, just as a guide, I'm just going to do like your main bass beat there. Okay, right, so now we've got lots of different options of things we could try around here. Like you can see the bass there, we could have recorded the bass in there instead. Now under the guitar, we can play around with the notes and actually make it sound like quite a real instrument. So you can it can start to sound quite real when you bend notes like that and you introduce a little bit more of different tunings. So you can also make it almost sound like you're strumming an acoustic guitar. So we can try playing that in now. Now it's not perfect, but that gives you a bit of a rough idea. It sounds a lot more realistic than if you inputted it in straight away. Now the issue with this is if you quantize it, it's going to make it sound a lot more robotic. So if you put on the quantize, you'll hear that it's completely changed the sound of it. Now maybe you want that sound, but I think really it's quite nice in this case to actually have it sounding a bit more real. Of course, it's not being played completely in time, so I think we want to make sure that's within the 12-bar framework there, and then we'll turn it down in the mix so it's not too loud. So under track volume, bring it down. Okay, so that goes along nicely with the piano chords and the bass. So we're going to loop that again. Now we need to start to think about maybe adding in some kind of melody. So we've got lots of different options of blues instruments that would work well for melody. If you go to the keyboard, you can look at instruments in there. So click on Alchemy Synth. There's lots of different instrument sounds in there that you could try. Lots of quite synthesized sounds that won't sound quite right on this, because we want it to sound like almost an acoustic, like authentic instruments, not too keyboardy really. However, one keyboard that could be good would maybe be the organ. So look down there. There isn't the saxophone in here. I think it is possible to get the saxophone, but French horn, brass ensemble, probably not quite appropriate. It'd be good to find a trumpet or a trombone, but we don't have them in here. I think you can find them somewhere. You might be able to download an extra pack. So if we go to different keyboards, we could do an improvisation melody on the piano, or we could maybe try a different organ. So bring it up an octave. There's the blues scale. Play along to the track and see what sounds good. Okay, so I think we can get our first melody in here. So once we've had a practice, we're going to try and record it in. Okay, so now we have to quantize it, make sure it's in time. So we'll go back to our main window, and we need to click on the quantize function again. So left of FX, click on the track settings, quantize. Now again, we're going to want some swing in this. Cuts through a lot, so we're going to turn it down a bit. Okay, so that's going to be our first melody. So now let's think about maybe playing on that guitar to put in a different second improvisation. So if we're going to go to the notes function of guitar, and on the scale we need to make sure we've clicked major blues. Alright, so something like that could work well. So again, we'll get in the right position. Alright, we're going to come in a bit earlier than that. So we'll come in leading in off the organ. Okay, so that's going to be our guitar solo there. Now the difficult thing with this is how do we edit this, because to quantize that we've got lots of quite fast moving notes. So if you quantize it, you'll notice it'll completely change the mood of it. we've lost those runs completely. So I think we should take that off. And it's you can edit it if there's notes that are out of time. Okay, so that is our second improvisation there. Gives us a rough idea of the piece so far. And now we can have a listen to the whole thing so far. Obviously this is quite short at the moment. Now we can hear there's a few notes in there we need to edit and change up, but that gives us a rough introduction of the start of our blues piece in C using iPhone Garageband.